the audio. Will someone? Thank you. Uh, and take it away, Howard.
Sure. My name, excuse me, my name is Howard Ebert. I am an alcoholic. Wow, 90, so there's almost 100 people here today. Wow, it's something else. Uh, First of all, uh, I wanted to say special thanks to the people who put their hand up and are counting days, who went, especially Navjeet. Navjeet, this meeting is for you. Everybody here, we're all here for you. My suggestion to you and any of the other people who had their hands up, get a big book, get a sponsor, get involved with a big book step study workshop. I put my information in the chat. So if you want to join us at the Big Book Comes Alive Sunday and Monday, please do. That's the road to success. I want to thank my friend Gordon for asking me to be here today. I let him talk me into this topic, and I have no idea where we're going to go with it, but we'll see how much of 45 minutes we can fill, but I'll do my best. Thank you for coming, everyone here, for showing up. I see so many people from the workshop. My God, Selena and Bill S. and Linda and Mark and especially the love of my life, Kathy, is here. I'd be lost without her, so I'm glad she's here to keep me on the straight and narrow. But enough of that. Just a simple disclaimer too. I do not mean to set myself up as an authority on the Oxford Group, Alcoholics Anonymous, the soul surgery concept, the 5 C's, or any of those things. I am a fellow traveler, a fellow student on a very broad highway of interpretation. And I tell you that so that if you hear anything that you can't reconcile with what you know or you find on this material, set it aside. If you have a question, if you do differ on that, please raise your hand afterwards and let's talk about it. That's how we learn, is from one another. So thank you all for coming. Gordon has asked me to talk about the concept of soul surgery. And in order to do that, I'm going to back up a bit and get into a little bit of history about what it is we're talking about. Soul surgery is a concept developed by the Oxford Group. If you're not familiar with the Oxford Group, let's talk about that. The Oxford Group is let me put some screen shares up here because I'm a visual person and I like to tell things visually. The Oxford Group is a first century Christian fellowship that believed they could change the world for the better, obviously, by changing one person who then changes his home with the people in it. Then they extend that out to the community, and then they go out to the nation, and then they go out to the world. He spoke to world leaders around this time to try and get them to subscribe to the Oxford's concepts. Sometimes he was more successful than others. Sometimes it came and bit him on the butt. But the Oxford Group had certain beliefs. They believed you can achieve absolute purity, absolute honesty, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. You can do that by participating in their spiritual activities. These are 6 that are most commonly referred to is giving into God's surrender, listening to God's direction, checking for guidance, restitution, sharing, and confession. If that stuff sounds a little bit like our steps, you're getting the point. That's supposed to. Those are the 6 that we know of, that we talk about. I don't want to talk about that one yet. Here's a picture of the founder of the Oxford Groups, Frank Bookman, with the movie star Mae West at the time, looking at a book, Moral Rearmament, with the title as Men, but that's a little private joke. But I wanted to show you this. Even though we talked about those 6 activities, the Oxford Group really had Four spiritual activities: sharing your sins with another Christian, restitution to all those that you've wronged, directly or indirectly, surrendering your life, past, present, and future, to God's keeping and direction, and listening for God's guidance and carrying it out. From those 4 steps, they expanded into the 6 that I just mentioned a moment ago. And then Bill Wilson came along and took it even further. Let me get to this next one. We're going to talk about soul surgery, so you have to put that in perspective here. Let me tell you what that's about. I apologize for the delay here. I usually have my guy work with me, but I didn't do that, so I'm doing this all by myself. So give me a moment to get there. It is. All right, let me get it so you could see it. All right. The Oxford group believed that the problems in the world had to do with sin. They believed that was the problem. And any problem, the sin, is anything that blocks you from God or other people. And they had a belief, they had a solution that you can cut out sin by this incisive surgical process that began with surrender of your life to God's direction and utilizing that power to cut out sin by what Frank Bookman I showed you a moment ago, is the founder of the Oxford groups. He believed in the 5 C's. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to talk about those 5 C's that make up the concept of soul surgery. Soul surgery is how you cut out the sin in individuals. So they believed in the 5 C's, as well as making amends, restitution, seeking God's guidance, continuing with the daily surrender, passing it on, and living by the spiritual principles of the Bible. This is a Christian fellowship. Let's not forget that. And here are the 5 C's. Number 1, confidence. Confidence to God, in God, to restore you to sanity. That became our first 3 steps. Confidence. Confession of shortcomings, which became steps 4 and 5. And the way they explained it is letting God and another believer in on your discoveries, your past mistakes, present temptations, alongside theirs, sharing one with the other. So they would be better able to recognize and bring to light those obstacles that stood between them and God. The expression 2 minds are better than one is an old saying that is more true when the subject in discussion is common to both parties, and sin is certainly common to everybody. So confession was sharing. Call it mutual confession. It is a rudiment of simple Christianity that's long since gone out of practice, except in certain sects that have retained the confession to God via a priest. Get it off your chest and you'll feel better, is wise advice for those of us troubled by life. But the second concept is confession. So the first one is confidence, belief that God could restore you to sanity, relieve you of this sin. Confession of those sins to another individual who shares theirs. Then there's conviction. 3rd C, conviction. To turn away from those failings. They called them failings, sins. We call them defects of character. We call them shortcomings. We call them wrongs. They're the same thing. Conviction to turn away from those after confession, which means steps 6 and 7. If confession would be step 5, here's where 6 and 7 came from. It meant being convinced that you'd screwed up in God's eyes and were willing to hate and forsake your sins. That's the terminology they used. That's why it's in quotes. It's not me. That's the verbiage they used. The 4th C, conversion, We call it spiritual awakening. Conversion was accepting Christ as your Lord and Savior, thereby being transformed into a new person. Therefore, and this is a quote from Corinthians, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things, I apologize for the misspelling there, are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. This was the changed life that arose from being born again of the Spirit of God. And again, let's not forget that this was a Christian fellowship. And here's the final one, continuance, which was originally called conversation. I'm glad they changed it because the continuance is confusing enough. They should add a sixth C, which is confusion. But be that as it may, continuance, the process of surrendering your sins daily, taking a daily inventory, making a daily confession, relying on the power of God to change, and then getting back into fellowship, working with others, with God, through the principles of Bible study, book study, we do, prayer, guidance, passing it on, and living by the principles of their four absolutes. Again, four absolutes that they strive for is absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. This very much became our 10th and 11th step. So hopefully you're starting to see where these things, how these things became our steps. Soul surgery is removing those sins via these steps. During the writing of the big book, Bill developed a more specific Oxfordized method of helping only alcoholics. They deleted aspects of the Oxford Group ideas which in their experience did not apply, such as, and here's some of the concepts that they eliminated, showing a lack of anonymity. Ours is an anonymous program. They have requiring a newcomer to accept God by a specific name, Jesus. We don't. We have God as you understand him. The book tells me that when the word God is used, it just is a way of indicating a concept, and that concept is mine and yours and yours and yours. It's Elise's, it's Gordon's, it's Kathy's, it's Christine's, it's Timothy, it's Michelle, it's Howard, it's everybody here. We have 90 some odd people, we have 90 some odd concepts of that power. But the Oxford Group believed in referring to God by a specific name, and they placed emphasis on attracting famous people to the fellowship, which we did not. Again, it's an anonymous program. To these 5 C's, Bill added Dr. Silkworth's ideas about alcoholism, the allergy and the obsession that account for step 1. Now, if that's what the Oxford Group was about, why did we leave them? Why didn't we just call ourselves the Oxford Group and modify a few of these steps? Well, the primary reasons that the as yet unnamed group called Alcoholics Anonymous left were these. They wished to concentrate on only alcoholics. The Oxford Group wanted to change the world. Alcoholics Anonymous just wants to work with drunks. That's all we're concerned about, not the rest of the world. We are sure our way of living has its applications for all, but we're not focusing on the rest of the world. We are focusing on one alcoholic at a time. Another reason why we left is the Oxford leader, Frank Bookman, had made some favorable comments in public about Nazi Germany, and I'll get to that in a minute, so let's put that aside if you would. Also, the Catholic Church was discouraging its members from joining other religious groups, which the Oxford Group was perceived to be, and the Oxford Group frowned on tobacco, frowned on caffeine use. So again, the Catholic Church was advising their what do you want to call them, constituents, not to be part of the Oxford Group because it's a Christian organization and that's opposed to the Christian Church. And again, the Oxford Group didn't believe in tobacco. Can you imagine if Alcoholics Anonymous did not allow people who smoke or drink coffee? There'd be nobody here. So those are some of the reasons why we left the Oxford group. And I mentioned this business about Frank Bookman. So let me give you some additional background on it. Let me find it first. Okay. Here we go. There's one. There's nothing to show here. All right. Let's try it one more time. All right. Now I should be able to access it. Sorry about this. All right. Let me get the share up here for you. There we go. Frank Bookman, their leader, went on a trip in the 30s to call on the heads of state in Europe, various countries in Europe. And you have to understand the time. This was World War II was about to break out and explode. These were the late 30s. And so he went there in August of 1936, after the Olympics. He went across, and one of the people he spoke to, two of the people were representatives of the Nazi government in Germany. He spoke to Joseph Goebbels and Albert Speer. Basically the one number 2 and number 3 man in Germany behind Adolf Hitler. And they told him some of their beliefs, and he told them what he would hope to try and do. Can you imagine if he was successful in converting some of these guys? It's just the mind boggles. But that was his intent. He didn't go there to become friends with them. He went there to try and convert them. And when he came back to New York, this is what happened. It would be helpful if I had it ready, wouldn't it? Here it is. He gave an interview to the New York World Telegram. And one of the things he said was he thanks God for a man like Hitler. And he was referring to Hitler's position on communism and Hitler's position as an antichrist figure. And that's what he was referring to. He wasn't saying he subscribed to the Nazis. It sounds like I'm apologizing for the guy, but what he was doing was a good idea. And he came back, he made a stupid statement. And you don't make a statement like, thank heaven for a man like Hitler in the late 30s, especially in New York. That was the end of the Oxford group as we know it. They basically imploded as a result of that. So we certainly weren't going to form under the name of the Oxford groups. We didn't want to carry that baggage with us. So what happened to the Oxford groups? Well, let me show you what happened to the Oxford group. I can find it here. The Oxford group still exists, incidentally. They're not called the Oxford group. They're called Initiatives for Change. You can find them on the internet. Just Google Initiatives of Change. This is a bit of their history, where it was founded, but that's what they call themselves today. Frank Bookman left the group, and they continued on a much lower key. They weren't looking to change the world. They were looking one at a time, going back to their basics. Change a person, change a family, change a community, change a town, change the world. That's what they believed in, and they still exist today. And I think I have one more thing I want to show you. Um, give me a second. Wow, I can't find it, so we're going to do without it. In any case, that's what soul surgery is. Soul surgery is the Oxford Group's method of relieving an individual of sin. We have our steps to remove defects so we don't drink. They had their beliefs and we took that from them. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you. Why Bill Wilson, Bill's words, why he didn't associate himself with the Oxford groups. If you'll notice, in the first edition, there's no mention of the word Oxford groups. It appears for the first time in the foreword to the second edition, which came out in 1955. So the term Oxford Group was not in print associated with Alcoholics Anonymous until 1955, well after World War II, when we had established ourselves well enough that that couldn't possibly hurt us. We had established that we're viable, and that resulted in reformed homes and successful changing of lives. But why did Bill not put them in? This is what Bill has to say about it. If you'll give me a second to find it. Oh, no. I really apologize for this. This is really amateurish shit. I'm sorry about it. All right, now I got it. Now I got to show it. Now that you've seen all of the shit backstage here in my computer, let me show you the one thing I was trying to show you, and then we can wrap up. Okay, there you go. Bill said, I had to ask myself which was more important, that the Oxford group receive credit. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the Oxford groups. That's how Bill got sober. That's how Dr. Bob got sober. We based our steps on that. And he says that that what was more important, that the Oxford group receive credit, that I have the pleasure of discharging my debt of gratitude, or that alcoholics everywhere have the best possible chance to stay alive regardless of who gets credit. So while Bill felt I would be able to pay back the Oxford groups by saying in print that we are here as a result of them, he didn't want to, he weighed the options of doing that. And if he did that, what would happen? There's a great chance that he wouldn't be able to help all the other people stay alive because of the association that was being formed in the 30s with the Oxford groups. And again, why are we harping on the Oxford groups? Because the Oxford group is where soul surgery came from. So I'm going to leave it on that. If anyone has any questions, take a shot at answering them. And I apologize really for the amateurish presentation of these things. I usually have someone helping me, and I did not today. So be that as it may, thank you all for coming. God bless you all.
Wow. Thank you. You have 20 minutes left if you'd like to talk about your own soul surgery.
No, those things became the steps, and we should all be able to see that in it. I'd be more interested in seeing what people have to think about this stuff. If there are any questions.
Okay. All right. Well, let's ask everyone to unmute and thank our speaker.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Howard.
Howard.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Howard.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Howard.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
Thank you,
much.
Howard. This was
Amateurish.
great.
Thank you.
Andy.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Let's open, let's see, where am I at here? Birthdays. If you have if you're celebrating a birthday this week, please send a text to Stephen and he will get that for you at the end of the meeting. We have a special way of doing chips at our meeting. In line with our seventh tradition, every AA group should be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Please make contributions to our meeting's PayPal account, which is www.paypal.com/paypalme/UK Open Lounge. And you can find that in the chat. Next week's speakers are, I don't know who's doing the STEP meeting, but here, the STEP meeting is on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock, the same login information. Our speaker next week is Yisrael, Living in the Real World. Now we're going to open the meeting for questions and answers or general sharing. Please direct your questions to our speaker. And of course, feel free, Howard, to respond back. Let's see, who has their hand raised? Wayne.
Hi, my name's Wayne. I'm an alcoholic. And Howard, I just have a quick question. I remember reading a while back that Clarence Snyder, who was a fantastic, I don't know if you're familiar with that person, but he was a character and caused a lot of issues. But I had read, I guess probably according to Clarence, the reason Alcoholics Anonymous is called Alcoholics Anonymous is because he broke away from the Oxford group and called his group Alcoholics Anonymous, mainly because they wouldn't allow Catholics in. And an Irish Catholic fella came to him one time and he wanted to get him in the Oxford group. And of course, they wouldn't let him. And that was one of the main reasons he broke away. So if there's anything you can talk about that incident or that.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you.
Aaron Snyder is an amazing character, and if you're not familiar with him, please get that information. Clarence Snyder should be considered one of our founders. The reason why he's not is he was on the wrong side of too many arguments with Bill Wilson. It's that simple. He didn't go out. That's why that happened. If you want to learn about him, Mitchell Klein wrote a fantastic book called How It Worked, the story of Clarence Snyder and the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous in Cleveland, Ohio. It is a phenomenal book. Clarence Snyder came up with some concepts that are responsible for us having sponsorship. That was Clarence's idea. Having rotation within groups, that was his idea. Having communication with groups and having them together to communicate between groups. These are all things that Clarence came up with. Clarence broke away from Akron. He got sober in Akron with Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob was his sponsor. He went back to Cleveland. And when the book came out, he adopted the name of the book for his group. He was the first one. He'll tell you that I am responsible for founding Alcoholics Anonymous because I named my group Alcoholics Anonymous. That is true. He did that. When he named the group Alcoholics Anonymous, there was a group of people from Cleveland, led by Dr. Bob, who went up there, and some of the people had a concept of trying to rough things up and bust things up when they came up to Cleveland. And thank God Dr. Bob was there because it ended amicably. They left with no fights, and that group retained the name Alcoholics Anonymous. So what you're saying is very much true. I live down here in Florida in Altamont Springs, which is adjacent to the town where he retired to and settled down here. And he went to a club called Rebos, Rebos, which is sober backwards. And Kathy and I have gone to several meetings there, and you can feel the presence of Clarence Snyder in that room. It's remarkable. There are still people there who were sponsored by him. I've been given some of his possessions. I have his little phone book. I have his copy of Not God that's signed by Ernest Kurtz to Clarence Snyder. It's one of my most valued possessions. But I hope that answers your question. I think I've just given you information overload. Is that good, Wayne? Okay.
All right, Sean,
Yeah,
come on in.
yeah, yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Howard. Thanks for that lead. And then just a question from the Oxford group, when you said the 5 C's and then continuance. Did they mention anything regarding like prayer, well, meditation and specifically?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's they had their concepts of quiet time and yeah, the answer to that is yes.
Thank you.
All right, and Bill.
What's up, mates? Happy January 11th, 111. That's a spiritual day. Howard, you never ever have to apologize for one of your presentations. As a matter of fact, I mean, you are so far off the spectrum. And in the doctor's opinion, it says you can rely on absolutely anything they say about themselves. I went down to Akron the other day, and Dr. Bob came out of the grave and said that they want to move the archives to your house, brother, because you do a better job than they do up here in Cleveland. What a great message. And the one thing that you didn't talk about, and I don't know if it was in today's reading, I know you know about it, is that the Oxford groups treated the alcoholics as if they were a subservient group. In fact, what some people in AA do, they might be Oxford people hiding out here. They would go in the upper room and hear from God, and then come downstairs and tell the drunks what God told them to tell the drunks. And the drunks says, screw that, we want to hear from God ourselves. And that's the reality. Our own conception, that was a gift. That was a gift that we got away from that, because if we had to take their conception of God, Alcoholics Anonymous may help a lot of drunks, but they might be all white Anglo-Saxon Protestant people. And we wouldn't have all the other reprobates that we get here. And incidentally, the more atheistic and sick they are, the more we love them for some reason. I love you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill touched on an important point. One of the things that the Oxford group believed in this quiet time concept was communication with their creator. And they'd get together in the upper room of the house and of Dr. Bob's home, and they would quietly communicate with God. And they write down the things that they heard. And they would do things like, in quiet time today, God told me, Bill, you need to wear a toupee. Right? We get messages from God, and it's not only pertaining to us, could be about other people. Imagine that. When they did inventory, it was done by the group. It wasn't an individual inventory. It was done by the elders of that particular group. These are things that the Oxford group did that would never sail today. But that's when Bill was talking about this quiet time communion, getting these messages from God, that's one of the basic foundations, is this quiet time communication and relaying that information to the rest of the people in the group. It wasn't always about you. It's you got a message that was intended for somebody else and you passed it along. How would that go over today?
All right, Kathy, would you like to come in?
Thank you so much, Christine. I found my right hand. Hi, Howard. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Chanel and Gordon. And Howard, I hope I've included everyone. That was so wonderful. And My name is Kathy. I'm an alcoholic, and welcome to all those who are new returning. I'm so glad you're here. I have hired, I don't usually do this. This happens at the kitchen table or in the study. I have 4 questions, and if that's not okay, that's okay. I'll give you the first question. So in your own words, or from what you've learned, say, define the word soul.
That's a good question. What is the soul? I guess it's the essence of who we are.
Mm.
My first thought is to say the heart, but the heart is a physical thing, and the soul is not. The soul is a concept, and I think that the soul is the essence of who we are. If at your core you believe in tolerance, compassion, patience, humility, forgiveness, love, and goodwill, that's your soul, I think.
Thank you. The other question is, can you run through the really quick, because I don't want to take time, the C's, and like have a really quick explain them really quickly.
Yeah, actually I got a screen I could share with you, but basically the 5 C's are confidence that God would restore you to sanity in a sense, confession of shortcomings, conviction to turn away from those shortcomings after confession, conversion, which is spiritual awakening, and continuance, which is giving it away, continuing the daily activities of prayer and meditation and so on.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, you know, the way it's not the soul surgery subject, but you know the way the Oxford group, you know, in step 11, Bill talks to us about our step 11 begins at night. We retire at night. When we retire at night, and like the Oxford group, what was it about in the original manuscript that it wasn't included at night? Everything started in the morning because of the Oxford group way, right? Could you explain that?
In the original manuscript, and I could dig it up here in a minute as we're talking, it didn't say upon it didn't say upon retiring. It didn't begin at night. It began in the morning. And one of the reasons why Bill wanted to change that is to get away from the Oxford concept of what they called pouring the mold, which was in the morning, kind of getting the plan for the day. And that's how they began there, I guess would be the 11th step. But Bill changed it to at night because he had a step for the day. They didn't have that kind of step. We have a day step 10. It's our daytime walking around step. It's a combination of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all rolled into one. That's our daytime step. And we begin our nighttime step by basically asking, how do we do with those things today? Right? Was I selfish? Was I dishonest? Was I fearful? Was I resentful? All of the things that we deal with over the course of the day. At night, we begin by saying, okay, how did we do? That's how we start the 11th step.
Okay. Final question. Did the Oxford group have, so in our 11th step, it says in the short version, sought through prayer and meditation. Did the Oxford group actually did they incorporate meditation into their?
Yeah, I mean, that concept of quiet time is basically meditation.
Yeah.
It's sitting quiet. It's getting in that. I could read to you one of their suggestions for how to do that. They say, get into a comfortable position, sit, recline, or kneel, whatever gives the greatest relaxation of your mind and body. Cultivate stillness of mind by an act of will, thinking peaceful, restful thoughts. Have unhurried, quiet, and sense of leisure, avoiding all tenseness. Does that not describe meditation?
Yeah. Yeah. So they just didn't say the word meditation. They said quiet time. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My little A girl. Thanks. Naveen.
Thanks. Jennifer, do you want to come in with your question or comment?
Hi, Howard. Thank you so much for your presentation. I am a member of your sister fellowship, and one question, do you know if Lois had a direct interaction or experience or contribution to the Oxford group? And the other thing, a comment from just to share what obsessive thinking, which is an Al-Anon trait, will do. I had surgery yesterday because my mind decided I could win over forcing a mat, and I broke my wrist. So I'm saying that because soul surgery to me, and I don't know I know the big book talks about physical malady overcome by spiritual. So I don't have the allergy, but we also have physical manifestations, and I think this is amazing that for me, a comment that I'm on a meeting that's about soul surgery and physical surgery. So that's my question and comment.
I'm not sure what the question was.
Question is, did Lois Wilson?
Yeah. Was she involved with the Oxford
Yes.
group? Yeah.
Yes. And could you talk about physical maladies? Like in my case, I had surgery, but I also think that this like actual surgery, but I think that stems from the soul surgery. They're not different.
Well,
If that makes sense.
first of all, yes. Lois was involved with the Oxford group. So was Ann Smith. In fact, Ann Smith is very much a more powerful influence from the Oxford groups in AA. But I mean, the answer to that, yes, Lois and Ann did have to have involvement with the Oxford group. Lois was not on the level of Ann Smith. She was there basically kind of as a passenger with Bill. She used her home for those meetings. So in a sense, yeah, she was involved in the Oxford group. When the Oxford group, I forget the terminology, when they kind of exited Bill and Lois, they used both names, Bill and Lois Wilson. I can't think of, they called them unpure. I forget the exact term. I'm sure someone will remember it in a minute. But when the Oxford groups basically exited Bill Wilson, it was Bill and Lois, the two of them. I don't know if that answers it, Jennifer. I did my best.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Before we go on to the next, if you just kind of indulge me for a second, I found that version of the 11th step from the original manuscript, and I'll get it right here. It began with this. It says, when you awake tomorrow morning, look back over the day before, and the rest of this should be familiar. Were you resentful, selfish, dishonest, afraid? Do you owe an apology? All of these things are basically in what's in the book now. But it started off with when you awake tomorrow, not when you retire at night. That's what Kathy was talking about. That's what was changed.
Okay, perfect. Dina, do you want to come in?
Yes. Hey, everybody, I'm Dina T, alcoholic. Good to see everybody. Thank you so much, Howard, for a great presentation. I love to hear you talk about all that stuff. And I'm glad all the day counters are here, especially the lady with the 1 day. Glad you're here. I heard that Frank Buckman started the Oxford group out of actually a resentment. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know. I didn't hear anything like that. Would be news to me.
Okay, Andrew Mack.
Oh, yes, hello, everyone. Howard, thank you so much for your presentation and your sharing. The only thing that came to my mind is something I recall about how AA works within our groups, and it reminds me of an early theologian priest from Italy who went to Germany, named Romano Guardini, and he was very prolific in his writings. And one of his statutes was religion, and that was equating that religion is man's way to God, and man is God's way to man. And that's one of the ways I interpret within the walls